Thinking of actors and the channels they use to interact with one another is a way to understand diplomacy. It makes us think about how diplomacy is conducted, thinking about it as a process taking place on different tracks. Track 1 diplomacy is what your average person thinks of when the word diplomacy is mentioned. Here, official representatives of the government or governments meet each other, such as diplomats meeting diplomats or heads of state conducting bilateral meetings. The advantages for this track of diplomacy are its conduits are invested with the power to speak for their country and are much more likely to have the resource to make change happen. Track 2 is the practice of diplomacy by non-state actors. They may be professionals in conflict resolution, or practitioners or theorists. An example is the international non-governmental organisation known as the Elders, an independent group of global leaders founded by Nelson Mandela. The group is chaired by Kofi Annan and includes former presidents, peace activists and UN Secretary-Generals. These Elders are no longer representatives of states. They offer their diplomatic experience and personal credibility for the purpose of mediation and negotiation. In reality, Track 2 is complementary to Track 1, and this is where we discover Track 1.5 diplomacy. For example, professional conflict resolution practitioners may prepare the ground for representatives of states to enter official dialogue with opposing parties or rebel groups. Then there is the unofficial role of private channels and behind-the-scenes roles. An example of the latter was the role of the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs in brokering the Oslo Accords between Israel and Palestine. A good example of Track 2 diplomacy merging into Track 1 diplomacy. A third track of diplomacy is grassroots or public diplomacy. The role of the public in shaping diplomatic relations has become increasingly important over the last decade as social networks have facilitated the creation of loose activist coalitions, enabling the public to easily rally together behind causes. For example, the momentum behind the global campaign for the decreased use of non-biodegradable plastics has come in large part from public pressure in many countries. In the UK, this includes those who were motivated by the scenes of environmental damage to the oceans in David Attenborough's Blue Planet 2 on the BBC. If you think that 3 tracks are quite enough, you might not appreciate more complex models which have been developed by Dr. Louise Diamond, John MacDonald, and other experts in multilateral diplomacy. They have identified up to 9 different potential tracks. We have governments, professionals and experts in conflict resolution, business, citizens, researchers, peace activists, religious leaders, funding, and media or public opinion. On any single issue, you will find influence running in different directions and between different parties, and it might look more like this. As you can see, diplomacy is rarely pure, never simple. The agent practitioners amongst you will already be aware of this. But ask yourself this: how useful are these models for the understanding of diplomacy? An alternative way of looking at the system as a whole is polylateralism, a term coined by Professor Jeffrey Wiseman of the Asia Pacific College of Diplomacy at Australia National University. The term builds on the better-known terms bilateralism and multilateralism, and it captures the systemic and dynamic relationship between official state entities, such as the UK or the UN, and non-state entities. Which model do you think is the more useful?